I always thought the ticking of a clock was comforting until the night I heard it coming from a watch that hadn't worked in years. My grandfather died on a rainy Tuesday. One moment, he was trimming the garden hedge in his usual pressed shirt and suspenders. The next, the neighbor found him slumped against the gate, his hands still stained with earth. No final words. No gentle goodbye. Just silence where his stories used to be. After the funeral, I returned to his house alone. Everyone else had moved on, their grief neatly folded into polite condolences and busy lives. But I stayed, wandering the dusty halls of his Victorian home in upstate New York, surrounded by framed sepia memories and clocks that hadn't chimed in decades. That's when I found it, the pocket watch. Tucked inside a box marked for Elise was a velvet pouch. Inside, the watch sat like a relic of another lifetime. Its face was cracked, its hands frozen at 11:59. And there, folded beneath it, was a note in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting. Don't trust the time. Trust your heart. I didn't know what it meant. Not then. Not until the night it started ticking. I couldn't sleep. The rain hadn't stopped since the funeral, and the house felt heavier than ever. At exactly midnight, I heard it, a soft, deliberate tick, tick, tick. I followed the sound to my grandfather's desk, heart thudding like a second heartbeat in my chest. The watch lay open on the desk. Moving. Alive. I reached out, but it stopped as soon as I touched it. The next morning, I took it with me. I needed air. I needed answers. I ended up at the old train station, the one Grandpa used to take me to when I was little. He'd sit on the wooden bench at platform 9, sipping coffee from a flask, watching the trains that rarely came. I hadn't been there in years. I was about to leave when I saw him. A man standing where my grandfather once did. Tall. Dark coat. Wind tousling his hair like it belonged to another time. He wasn't watching the trains. He was watching me. He stepped forward, voice calm but certain. You found the watch? I froze. How do you know about that? He hesitated, then offered a small, sad smile. Because I've been waiting for you. I should have walked away. Everything about the man felt wrong, like he had stepped out of a dream I hadn't meant to have. But there was something in his voice, in the way he said you found the watch, that rooted me to the spot. You knew my grandfather? I asked slowly. He nodded. Not well. But well enough. What does that mean? He looked at the bench beside us. May I? I didn't answer, but he sat anyway. His presence didn't feel threatening, just unsettling. Like a memory trying to surface. I'm Lucas, he said. Lucas Hart. Elise, I replied, though he clearly already knew. He tilted his head, eyes dark and unreadable. He told me if the watch ever started ticking again, it meant it had found its way back to the right hands. I narrowed my eyes. That sounds like a story. A fairy tale. No, he said. More like unfinished history. I don't know why I stayed. Maybe because my grandfather rarely spoke about the war. Or because this stranger had eyes that held too many years. Or maybe it was the watch, cold in my coat pocket, pressing against my heart like it wanted to be heard. Lucas reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in wax paper. Carefully, he unfolded it, a faded letter, yellowed and fragile. My breath caught when I saw the handwriting. I knew it. My grandfather's. I leaned forward, but Lucas didn't hand it to me. Not yet. He wrote this to someone named Clara, he said softly. But it was never sent. Clara. I whispered. That name didn't exist in my family tree. Not on any photo, not in any story. Lucas nodded. She was the one he loved before the war turned him into someone else. I felt my stomach twist. My grandmother's name was Margaret. I know. Back home, I tore through the drawers in my grandfather's old desk. The third drawer stuck halfway open, as it always had, and something caught against the back panel. I pressed it gently and it popped loose. Inside were bundles of letters, bound by fraying red ribbon. 50 of them. All addressed to Clara. None were sent. I called Lucas that night. He answered on the first ring. You found them? I did. There was a pause. Then you're ready to know the rest. We met at a corner cafe near the station. He wore the same coat, the same quiet look of someone carrying too much in his chest. I brought the letters. He brought a small leather journal, his grandfather's, he said. My grandfather's name was Julian Hart, Lucas explained. He and your grandfather served in the same unit. I've been trying to piece together what happened ever since I found this. He tapped the journal. It mentioned Clara. And your grandfather. And a betrayal. A betrayal. I echoed. He nodded. Something happened near the end of the war. Something that made Julian walk away from both Clara and your grandfather. And you think my grandfather never forgave him? I think your grandfather carried it until the end. When I returned home, I sat with the letters, reading them one by one. Each one was a thread unraveling everything I thought I knew. My grandfather had loved Clara deeply, achingly. But there were hints of danger in his words. Hints of someone trying to come between them. Secrets he couldn't name. Regrets too heavy to speak. And over again, one phrase appeared at the end of each letter. I keep the watch near my heart, but it hasn't ticked since you left. When it does, I'll know you're near. That night, I wound the watch for the first time. It didn't tick. But in my sleep, I dreamed of trains and soldiers and a woman in a red scarf, standing beneath a clock tower with tears in her eyes. And when I woke, the watch was ticking. Lucas showed up at my door the next morning, holding coffee and caution in equal measure. I hope you like it strong, he said. I like answers stronger, I replied. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. One cup at a time. We sat in the sunroom, my grandfather's favorite spot. The watch lay between us on the table, ticking quietly. Steady. Like it had been waiting for this moment too. You said your grandfather betrayed mine, I said. Tell me how. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, choosing his words with care. Julian and your grandfather were stationed in Italy during the war. They were messengers running coded letters between resistance groups. It was dangerous work. One mistake could cost lives. And Clara? She was a translator for intercepted messages. brilliant, brave, and in love with your grandfather." His voice faltered. But Julian loved her too. I stared at him. So it was a love triangle. No. Not exactly. He hesitated. Clara chose your grandfather. But then something happened. A message was intercepted, and a mission went wrong. People died. Do you think your grandfather blamed mine? He nodded slowly. And I think he took something from him. Something more than Clara. We spent the next few hours going through the letters. There were cryptic mentions of the river house, a false code, and someone called Kestrel. Clara's name appeared less as the letters went on. The tone shifted from hope to heartbreak, from love to loss. They stopped after this one, I said, holding the final letter. He never wrote her again. Lucas read it aloud softly, like he was speaking to ghosts. If time won't turn for us, then let it be. But if one day, this watch beats again, I'll follow wherever it leads. Even if it's only to goodbye. That night, I found Lucas standing outside the house, staring at the stars like they owed him something. I used to think my grandfather was a hero, he said. But now, I wonder if he ran from the truth. Maybe he did, I said. But so did mine. All these years, he never told anyone about Clara. Not even me. Lucas looked at me. Maybe they were protecting us. Or maybe they just couldn't face what they lost. A silence fell between us, not awkward, but full of something fragile. I could feel it building, like the air before a storm. Lucas stepped closer. Elise, he said softly, I didn't just come for answers. My heart tightened. Then why did you come? He reached into his coat again and pulled out an envelope. I came because someone sent this to me 2 weeks ago. No return address. No explanation. Just this. He handed it to me. Inside was a photograph. Black and white. 2 men in uniform, my grandfather and another soldier, younger, sharper. Julian. Between them stood a woman. Clara. But it wasn't the photograph that made my blood run cold. It was the back. In faint pencil, someone had scrawled. The river house still stands. The truth waits below the floor. I looked up at Lucas. You still want to know what happened? He didn't blink. I need to. So do I. We didn't say anything more. Not as we walked back inside. Not as we stood in the hallway, inches apart. The watch ticked faintly in my pocket. And for the first time since my grandfather died, I didn't feel completely alone. We drove in silence. The map Lucas had brought drawn in the margins of his grandfather's journal led us out of the city, past rusting bridges and winding roads. Morning sun flickered through the trees like it was unsure if it should shine on us at all. The river house stood on the edge of a clearing, its bones grey and tired. Ivy strangled the porch posts. The windows were clouded like old eyes. Time hadn't been kind. This place looks abandoned, I whispered. Lucas didn't answer. He pushed open the creaking door, and we stepped into dust and memory. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and ghosts. Lucas's flashlight swept across a room that must have once been a study, faint outlines of shelves, a stone hearth, and scattered papers now faded into time. This was their meeting place, he said. According to the journal, this was where Clara helped decode intercepted messages. My grandfather wrote. We were never closer than the nights at the river house. He didn't say who we meant. I ran my fingers across a cracked floorboard. You think the truth is under here? I think the truth has been waiting for someone brave enough to look. It took us an hour to find the hollow panel. Lucas pried it up with a pocket knife, revealing a compartment no larger than a shoebox. Inside, a rusted tin, wrapped tightly in oilcloth. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were 3 things. A bundle of letters sealed with wax. A worn notebook titled Clara's Cipher Book. And a photograph. One I wasn't prepared for. It was a picture of Clara, yes. But she wasn't alone. She stood arm in arm, with my grandfather. And she was pregnant. Lucas sat heavily on the floor, shock rippling through him. He couldn't finish. I could barely breathe. She was carrying his child. But, there's no record. No birth, no family. I turned over the cipher book. Inside the front cover was a name. To the child time couldn't keep Julian. I stared at Lucas. That's your name. The room tilted. Lucas looked like the ground had just opened beneath him. That means you're not Julian Hart's grandson, I said slowly. You're mine. He shook his head, stepping back. No. That's not possible. It is. You're my grandfather's blood. Clara's child lived. Somehow, your family buried the truth. Or maybe Julian raised you as his own. He sat down hard, the air gone from the room. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. For both of us. We didn't speak for a long time. Not until the sun began to slant through the window, casting long shadows on the floor. Then Lucas said, "Does it change everything?" I looked at him. It changes the past. But not what we've built. Not what we feel. He looked at me, then really looked, and I knew he felt it too. Not just the grief. Not just the weight of legacy. But us. That night, we stayed at the river house. No one had lived there for decades, but it didn't matter. We made a fire, curled up under a dusty blanket, and let the silence do what words couldn't. The watch ticked faintly on the mantel. At some point, Lucas brushed a strand of hair from my face, fingers lingering. "I don't know who I am anymore," he whispered. "You're the man I've trusted since the moment you said my name," I whispered back. His lips found mine, then soft, tentative, as if asking a question neither of us was ready to answer. And in that moment, time didn't matter. Only the heart did. We left the river house before dawn. Neither of us spoke on the drive back. The air between us was full, not with distance, but with everything unspoken. Lucas kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting lightly on the watch, now ticking steadily in his coat pocket. I held the cipher book in my lap like it might fall apart if I let go. Back at my grandfather's house, we spread everything out on the dining room table: the notebook, the letters, the photograph, the map, the journal. Pieces of a puzzle too long scattered. And then we found it. In the cipher book, Clara had written dozens of codes, messages, and half-finished notes. But one entry stood out. Written in hurried ink, different from the rest. Julian lied. The letter never reached him. If you find this, Elise, forgive me. The truth was stolen. Not forgotten. My breath hitched. She tried to contact him. Lucas's face went pale. But someone intercepted the letter. We went back to the box of unsent letters. Each had a wax seal, my grandfather's. All except one. A different seal. One that didn't belong to him. Lucas examined it closely. This is military. This is official. We exchanged a glance. It wasn't my grandfather who kept the truth hidden. It was someone else. We dug deeper into Lucas's grandfather's journal. And there it was in the final pages. A confession, scrawled in fading ink. She loved him. Not me. I couldn't bear it. When the letter came, I burned it. I told Clara he had moved on. That he never replied. She broke. And I kept the child as mine. Forgive me. Lucas sat back in his chair, face hollow. He lied to them both. He stole her life. And yours. I reached across the table, took his hand in mine. And yet, we're here. Because of it. The truth burned. All this time, I'd thought my grandfather was the one who let go. That he buried Clara in silence. But it wasn't him. It was the man who called himself Julian Hart. Lucas's grandfather in name, his captor in legacy. Lucas stood up, his fists clenched. I spent my whole life worshipping a man who took everything from her. From your grandfather. From me. He turned to the mantel, where the watch now rested. He never wound this watch. Because it was never his to fix. That night, we sat side by side on the back porch. The cicadas sang like tiny clocks in the dark. The stars blinked quietly above us. I don't know who I am anymore, Lucas said again. But this time, it wasn't a question. Just a truth. You're the man who searched for the truth when everyone else buried it, I said. You're the reason the watch ticks again. He looked at me with something like awe. I think I loved you the moment you said don't trust the time, I whispered. Even if I didn't know it yet. He leaned in, not rushed, not desperate, just sure. And when he kissed me, it wasn't about stolen time or rewritten history. It was about now. I stood in the attic, morning light slanting through the narrow windows, the scent of old cedar and time-soaked paper hanging in the air. The pocket watch rested in my palm. Still. Silent again. For the first time since it began ticking, I wasn't afraid of the quiet. Maybe it had done what it came to do. Led me here. To the truth. To Lucas. To love. We held a small memorial that afternoon, not for my grandfather, but for Clara. No grave. No name carved in stone. Just the river, the woods, and the echo of a story finally unburied. Lucas read the final letter aloud, my grandfather's unsent goodbye. To the one I never stopped loving. If you are reading this, I was too late. But know this, you were my first and final heartbeat. I never stopped searching. And when this watch ticks again, know that our story lives on, not in time, but in those who come after us." He folded the letter, placed it in a glass jar, and buried it under the oldest tree by the river house. I stood beside him, heart full. Later, we sat in the front seat of his car, hands clasped between us. "I should go," Lucas said, glancing at the road ahead. "There's a part of me that still needs to untangle the rest." "You could do that from here," I said, not looking at him. He studied my face. "You want me to stay?" "I want you to want to stay," I whispered. His fingers curled around mine. "Elise, everything I came looking for led me to you." Then, after a beat, "I'm tired of chasing ghosts. I want to build something real." We moved the watch to the mantel in my living room. Still broken. Still unwound. But not forgotten. I started writing my grandfather's story, Clara's, even Julian's. The untold history of a love interrupted and the grandson and granddaughter it unknowingly brought together. Lucas worked with local historians, finding ways to preserve the cipher book and Clara's letters. Some days we spent hours at the station bench where we first met. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. Just sat together, letting time pass the way it was meant to. One night, weeks later, I awoke to the sound of ticking again. The watch was ticking. Stronger than ever. I reached for it, half asleep, and found a note tucked beneath it. Lucas's handwriting this time. "I still don't trust time. But I trust you. And I trust what we're building. They say love is about timing. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's about truth. About choice. About hearing the tick of something broken and deciding to listen anyway." My grandfather never wound the watch again because he didn't need to. He left the truth buried, knowing one day, it would find its way to me. And I didn't fix it. I just let it tick on its own. Because love doesn't always follow time. But the heart always knows. If this story moved you even a little, please like or comment, it helps more people find it. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss a love story whispered just for you. We're building something special here, a space for stories that speak to the soul. I'm so glad you're part of it.